Morning, Chris.
Good morning, Anthony Franco. How are you on this fine Thursday morning?
I can't believe we're less than a week away to Christmas.
It is remarkable. I'll give you one quick anecdote as we get started. As the sun is rising here in Denver this morning, I was in Nashville for a quick trip and did not see the sun for 3 days. And I'm like, oh, yes, there's still a sun out there. I love it. Anthony, in the 1880s, inventor Nikola Tesla. There's that.
You've never heard Tesla before?
No, I've never heard that term before. I mean, I'm already crushing my read. This is great. It's great. It's clearly my.
Here we go. All right, start over.
One time zone.
We're gonna cut that part out. Start from the top. Just all right, go.
Okay. In the 1880s, inventor Nikola Tesla was famously captivating by his vision for alternating current power. AC is what they call that, Anthony, not DC. AC power. While his initial ideas were revolutionary, he faced significant challenges in convincing others of its viability. Tesla's unwavering dedication sometimes bordered on infatuation. We would know nothing about that, leading to clashes with established conventions. The story illustrates the tension between passion and practicality, a struggle that many founders face when nurturing an idea today. We are fortunate to have a guest, Mr. Terry Whalin, a seasoned editor, author of more than 60 books. Apparently, all of those books, like, they didn't have pictures in between of them. Like, it was not a children's book. 60 real live books. That's incredible. Published a veteran and has unique perspective on how to develop, test, and refine ideas for maximum impact. Terry, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Terry.
On a sunny
morning, Chris. Anthony, wonderful to be here with you. Appreciate the opportunity.
This is fun. So just so everybody here knows, Chris and I are not only interviewing Terry, but we're pitching him our idea for books. So apologize for
that live on the podcast.
Bring it on. I'm ready.
Yeah. I wonder. So if you've published, you said you've authored 60 books and you've been a part of, we were just talking before the show, how many books have you been an editor or been somehow associated with?
Oh, hundreds, I would say, Chris, because Morgan James is the third publisher that I'm working for. And so in the acquisitions editor area, which means I'm a hunter or gatherer. I find I'm often the very first person that looks at the stuff that comes in. At Morgan James, we receive over 5,000 submissions a year and only do about 180, 200 books. So there's definitely a sorting, sifting process to figure out which books we're going to publish at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I know we're going to be talking about an idea, Infatuation, today, but just to cue us up, what is the worst pitch you've ever heard for a business book?
Besides ours.
Besides us. I just want to be like
besides the one we gave you before we started going live. So
right.
Speak us out.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of terrible pitches over the years. So I don't know that I have a worst one, but I mean, on the fiction side, I can think of an unusual one that I had. I was a literary agent for a couple of years in Arizona, and I got a call from an author that wanted to send me her novel, or wanted to come by and see me with her novel, and I'm like, just send it to me in the mail. You don't have to physically come to my office to talk to me. She said, okay. So she sent me this thing. It was a big box, and I opened it up, and I'd heard about this before, but I'd never actually seen one. I opened it up, and it was a bunch of legal pages that were all handwritten.
Okay.
A novel.
It was a manifesto
that she'd actually sent to me as
She
a,
sent a handwritten, her only copy of the
probably
of
her
the
only
novel.
copy. Probably her
Oh
only
my
copy.
goodness.
And I looked at that and I thought, oh, I can't hang on to this. This is probably her only copy. So I read a few pages, and I mean, it was what you expect. It was terrible. And I photocopied a few pages just to know that I'd actually physically sent this thing. And then I boxed that thing up with a polite thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, maybe just type it.
Publishers.
Maybe just send an email next time. All right, so let's talk about what a terrific thing, because this person was clearly infatuated with an idea, and maybe not as infatuated with technology. Maybe needed to be a little bit more infatuated with technology. So I just want to start with the very top of this concept. When we're talking about idea infatuation, why does this matter? Why does it matter that we don't get too excited about one idea and one concept? And why is it important for us to understand when we get overly infatuated with single idea and concept? What do you think, Terry?
Well, I think it's important to be excited about your idea, because you're the best person at the end of the day to actually tell people about your idea. So you need some level of passion and infatuation, but at the same token, you need to test your idea in the market. I mean, I've had authors, for example, that won't tell me their title because it's secret. It's like, there are no secret titles out there. Everything's been, there's nothing new under the sun, as Solomon said. So
wait, they didn't want to tell you their title because they didn't want to reveal what their idea was?
Yeah, they didn't want to reveal what it was. So it's like,
oh, the title of the book. Yeah,
the title of the book.
The title of the book. Got it.
Three to eight.
I can't tell my publisher what I'm writing about.
Spine,
Brilliant.
It's in our world, Terry, what that comes down to, and it's luckily, I think it's been driven out of the business just because it's so profoundly stupid. The people in the founders world, we talk about it all the time. It's when somebody would come to me as a peer or an advisor, or I'm not an investor, at least not at that point. And they would ask me to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which is the worst piece of legal document you can ever write because it's completely nonsense anyway. And they would hand you, Anthony, have you had that where somebody hands you an NDA and says, like, I'd like to get your help on this idea. And
I think this is a clear symptom of a cause of idea infatuation. I think holding on to your idea like it is the golden egg. I didn't have somebody. So I've had people tell me they didn't want to tell me their idea. The craziest example I have of this is when somebody came to Effective and they wanted us to build an app. They wanted us to build something for them. And the very first question is, all right, so what's the business case behind it? How are you going to make money with this app? How does it fit into the business? And they told me it was none of my, like, why are you asking me that? It's none of your business. How we like, what, how am I going to help you accomplish? Yeah. It's like, how are you going to monetize this is kind of an important a question to ask before you build something. Anyway, so I've seen this. Like I've seen all kinds of different flavors of this. Yeah.
It's like going to Terry and being like, Terry, I'd like you to edit my book or publish my book. It's like, well, what's the book about? I can't tell you.
I can't tell you what
the book's about. I can't tell you.
You have to sign an NDA.
And we sign the NDAs sometimes when they send it to us, but I clearly tell them with those NDAs that paper is worthless without the author. I mean, really, we can't, sure, your book idea is totally worthless to us if you're not involved.
Right.
And you're not the right author. We're looking for the right book and the right author. It's that simple.
It's such a terrific parallel as we talk about this, because one of the things that we've been talking about is a founder is somebody who's probably going to do this job multiple times. It's going to create a company, and then they're going to create something else, and they're going to create something else. That is a professional founder, and something that Anthony and we take a lot of pride in the fact that we're professional founders. In your case,
wait, Chris, I gotta.
Oh, yeah. It's your professionalism that I respect.
I had to.
Oh
You
God,
set me up for
Terry.
it. I had to.
Yeah, you've been that was on you had that on like your trigger finger there. It's the same concept with authors, which is a lot of times people will probably come to you with this concept of they have the book idea. They have the thing. And without any expectation or knowledge that the goal is to be a communicator, a teacher, an author, somebody that's able to share knowledge into the world. Is that a fair assessment, Terry?
Oh yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, I can think of an author a few years ago that had this book, a great concept, "The Garbage Man's Guide to Life." Was this?
Oh, it's
was
what a
this
great
concept.
title.
Yeah, I would be interested in that.
And he was working with somebody that had sold a waste management company millions of dollars. They had $30,000 they were going to spend on the marketing for this book. Here's the hitch, though. They hired a marketing company that we'd never heard of, and we're in the book business, so you think we'd know these PR firms that are really good at promoting and helping authors sell books. We never heard of this one. So that book got out there into the market, but didn't even move the needle, because the firm that they hired didn't have any idea how to really promote and sell books at the end of the day. So, I mean, there's a lot of details with this business that are important. And if one little detail gets messed up, you're sunk. You're not going to be successful. I mean, I have a book on my desk here that came from a New York publisher the other day, and it's a really great book. I'm going to do my bit to write a review and help promote this book. So I really like it. But I flipped it over, and the barcode on the back of the book is wrong. They didn't put the price in the barcode. So it has a 9 and 4 zeros. So every time somebody buys that book in a bookstore, takes it to Barnes and Noble, to the cash register, that person is going to have to punch in that price to sell that book.
Oh, yes. That, in other words, that book is going to be put on the bottom shelf and like buried in the back. Like nobody's
and returned. I mean,
right.
It's wrong. I mean, somebody really screwed up doing that, and they have no idea really how that's going to affect the sales at the end of the day. I mean, just something simple like that.
Tiny little things. All right. So here's what we've come to this point. So we know that idea infatuation could be dangerous. The goal is to be a problem solver. Somebody wants to understand the space. Anthony, we talk about this with founder market fit. In other words, be obsessed with the problem that you're trying to solve, not necessarily the individual method that you're trying to solve, not the product, not the feature that you're trying to solve it with.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get into the nitty gritty here. So how is I as a founder, Terry, and in your case, when authors come to you and you start to see this narrowing of focus, this where you're kind of getting your blinders on, how can you start to recognize that? And more importantly, how is I, the person coming to you, how can I start to recognize that as a problem, as I need to take these blinders off?
Well, the first thing that every book author has to understand is the huge competitive world that we live in as authors. I mean, there are over 11,000 new books that come out every day. So
11,000 a day?
11,000 a day. That includes the self-publishing books out there. So I mean, there's a massive amount of stuff. I mean, that's why your book may or may not be inside a bookstore. I mean, they have limited space of the number of books and titles that they can do. I mean, you just have to understand that that's what you're up against here. So you have to really work at your pitch to that editor or that publisher, and understand that they're gonna figure out in a matter of seconds whether they're gonna read it or not. I mean, I interviewed an acquisitions editor the other day, and I asked him, how does he know when he finds a good one, a good idea. And he said, well, Terry, I read the first page and I read the first sentence. And if it's a good sentence, I read the next sentence, and if it's a good paragraph, I read the next paragraph. I mean, it's that straightforward. So don't bury your best idea over on page 5 because somebody may never get there. I mean, people wonder how in the world I've written more than 60 books. I write them one book at a time, one page at a time, one idea. But hey, I'm persistent. I persevere. I'm consistent. Those are qualities that all of us can do, and you've got to build that into your structure. How you do. I mean, for books, for example, I was very frustrated as an acquisitions editor at my first publisher because I go into these meetings with my publication board and they're brutal. They're really brutal. I mean, the chief operating officer of the company, we had these big notebooks and he would pipe up every now and then. And when I got to one of my books, he'd say, "Oh, Terry, we could sell 2 of those, one to me and one to somebody else." I mean, it was a death knell for that particular idea. And so I'm like, okay, let's flip the tab and move on to the next book because that one was done when I got that kind of news. We weren't trying to sell 2 books. We were trying to sell thousands of books. So I wrote years ago as a frustrated acquisitions editor, I wrote this book. It's out there called Book Proposals That Sell, 21 Secrets to Speed Your Success. And that book has, helped people get a literary agent, get an advance, get a book deal. And you can get that book for free from me if you go to bookproposals.ws, bookproposals.ws website. And that pulls up a page that has the cover of the book and a big button that says free book. Now, why in the world would I give that ebook away? Well, I give it away because of something we've learned at Morgan James. We've learned that if we give away that ebook, there's a high probability that person is going to turn and buy the print copy of the book. So we give that thing away like water, and we give those email addresses to the author. I mean, which Amazon or no other company does to help that author build their email list. I mean, we're doing some very innovative things out there in the marketplace that I know for a fact nobody else is doing. And that's why we're successful at Morgan James Publishing of actually getting the books sold at the end of the day.
Anthony, I think there's so many incredible parallels to what being a book. I mean, like I'm just trying to think about all the ideas when you go into a VC pitch and they're like, terrible idea, next. You're like, oh, I've become so infatuated with my idea that sometimes I fail to see the overall market and whether or not my idea, my company, my product will be successful. In Terry's case, the book will be successful. In your experience, Anthony, in the startup world, how can I start to keep that perspective of making sure that I don't get too obsessed with the individual path that of a product and stay open to what the market's trying to tell me?
Well, I think there are a lot of parallels, and an idea for a book is really no. I mean, you are essentially starting up a product, right? A book is a product,
yeah,
and so
business.
yeah, or a business. You're right. I mean, look at Stephen Covey, right? I mean, he built a whole business around a book, and the interesting thing here is, and I think what Terry's saying that matters the most is the idea doesn't matter anywhere near as much as your ability to sell it, or more importantly, somebody willing to buy it. Like you have to figure out whether or not what you're creating, somebody will open their wallet for. And the other thing that Terry's dancing around is, you also have to not only care deeply about your idea and be innovative on the idea, but the way you bring it to market has to also be incredibly innovative. So Terry brought up one, taking a book and giving it away for free so you can sell other books. That's so counterintuitive to most people. It's like, I'm going to need to give stuff away in order to get customers to sell more stuff to. I think it's dead on. And we talk about this in other podcasts, Chris. Growth hacks. So we talk more. Let me even say this more. In the 250 chapters that we have outlined for our podcast, only a couple are identifying how do you solve a problem, how do you craft an idea. Most of them are a lot more are dedicated to how do you get the idea into market, how do you test it, and how do you get people to open their wallets to buy it. So I think the harder problem for founders is not ideas. The harder problem for founders is selling their ideas.
So Terry, let's go back upstream a little bit. And I have an idea. And in this case, I have an idea for a book. And I think it's a great idea. Before you get to the moment where I'm sending in a terrible book proposal in a manifesto that's handwritten and makes us all worried about the future of humanity, what are some things that I can do to start to get feedback, to start to understand this? Because again, the conventional wisdom is, oh, my idea is so good, I can't talk about it, I can't share it. The reality is probably very different in your world. Talk about that for a second, Terry.
Well, you get feedback by being in a critique group is one of the things we do in the writing community, for example, and you learn a lot, whether that's online or whether that's a physical critique group. I mean, years ago when I was getting started, I was in a group with 3 people, and we got together once a month and had breakfast with each other. And basically, our commitment was to write a chapter or a pitch or something that we would send to each other before we got together. And so that would be something we'd each mark up and bring to the meeting. So we sat down, ordered our breakfast, and then, worked the first one, the second one, all the way around the table. And so when you walked away from that meeting, you came away with, 3 other people scratched up your idea to give you ideas what you can do to improve it. I mean, that was golden. I learned a lot from that experience, and so that's one of the keys, I think, is to really test your idea in the market, get feedback from people. That's why you see these people that, they have 4 different book covers and they put it out to see which of the 4 people gravitate toward more. I think that's wise on their part.
Anthony, same thing happens with founders. What's your take on that? How do I make sure that I, as an early stage founder, he said these critique groups, which are incredible. Like, what's your take as far as the entrepreneurial journey?
It's way easier. If I'm being candid, I think it's way easier for writing than it is for startup ideas. You have a couple problems as a founder, a couple disadvantages. One, look, I suffer from this too. You're looking for validation on your idea. So asking for critique is it's really hard. Secondly, you lead the witness. When you're asking for feedback, you're going to lead the witness into giving you a positive response. So you have to and third, people don't want to criticize you. They don't want to tell you what's wrong with it. So you're in an uphill battle trying to get actual valuable feedback. So ways around that are, one, you present somebody an idea as a great tactic. Present it as though you're helping somebody else. It's not your idea. So take yourself out of it. 2, say what's wrong with it. Look for the things that are wrong with your idea. That's also really, like, tell me how to improve this. Tell me what you would do. Tell me why you would X, Y, and Z. The third, and I think the most powerful way to get good feedback and to tell whether or not your idea is right, is pre-sell. Sell it before you have a product. Will somebody actually open their wallet for it? Will they provide you an email address? Will they tell you to tell them when it's ready? So those are three things that I think that kind of help you navigate getting that critique that is so hard to get when you're a founder. You can't even get it oftentimes from VCs. You're in a VC room, you're pitching your idea, and they will tell you nothing about what's wrong with your idea, which is I don't understand why VCs do that, because really what the founder needs is, here's what's wrong, here's where you need to navigate.
Terry, let's just do this in real time. Are you ready? Anthony and I are writing a book, and it's going to be really great. You like it, right, Terry? You like it.
Right.
Right. I like it. On this. It's our entire future.
I
mean, it's this idea. We call it, don't call your baby ugly, or ask what's ugly. What part of your baby is ugly. I know it's a crass analogy, but it's this idea that you are so attached to this idea as a founder. I imagine you see the same things. What advice do you give to early stage aspiring authors to not get in a place where you're so in love with what you're doing that you're unable to hear that feedback? That's a very difficult thing to do, isn't it?
Well, it is difficult, but by the same token, you want somebody that's going to tell you the honest truth about your book and your book idea before you get it out there. I mean, we invest thousands of dollars into these books that we publish, and so we don't make those decisions lightly. And you want to convince us that your book, of all the different ones we're looking at, is the right one for us to publish and get behind and market and help you get it out there into the market. So you want to be persuasive in your pitch, but you also want to be honest. I mean, I can even think of my 10 Publishing Myths book that I did. I mean, they shipped that out to the salespeople and got some feedback about the color and of the type and just some details like that changed in the creative process. I was okay with those changes. Some authors might have resisted those changes, but I want to dig into that just whatever's gonna be needed to make the book sell at the end of the day.
There's a lot of nuggets in there, Chris.
Yeah. But just let's take that back just one level. So Anthony and I talk about this a lot, which is we're veteran founders. We consider ourselves founders. You're a veteran author. You've written so many books, but take me back to those first couple of books that you wrote. I remember pitching my first company and people being honest and going, Chris, there's not anything there. And they were just being kind to me. And it felt like daggers in my heart. It felt like people were ripping out my soul. For you, those early stages, did you feel like you were so attached? And how did you grow beyond that to say, feedback is great. Feedback is the thing that we need to be successful?
Yeah, you kind of go through a metamorphosis process to do that. But, really what comes to mind with me there, Chris, from your question is that in 2007, I was running a little literary agency out in North Scottsdale, Arizona. And Mark Victor Hansen, the co-author for Chicken Soup for the Soul, invited me to come out to Los Angeles for the mega book marketing university that he was having out there, 400 people. And so I came as an agent. I took pitches during that event, but I also sat there with all 400 people and listened to the speakers. And at that point in my life, I'd written about 50 books for traditional publishers. Twice I've gotten 6-figure advances for those books. Now I have long stories why those books didn't succeed in the marketplace.
Right.
But publishers, pay advances. They give you a royalty statement once a year or quarterly or something like that. All of my statements at that point in my life were in the minus category. They'd never earned back.
Oh yeah, below zero, right?
Never, And so
sounds like Chris and I's career.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds like our startups.
I loved writing. I was just going to write the next book. I didn't. But bookstores, they made pretty books. They put them in the bookstores, but they weren't selling. And so it was almost like during that event, I listened to the different speakers, and one of the speakers was Jack Canfield, the other co-author on Chicken Soup for the Soul. Now, Jack Canfield has written this book. It's a best-selling book called The Success Principles, where he really analyzes what it takes to be successful. The very first success principle says that I will take 100% responsibility for my own success. Now, none of us want to take 100% responsibility. We want somebody else to do it. We want a publisher, a publicist, a marketing guy, somebody else other than us. But, you know, I looked at my own life at that event, and I realized how little I was doing to promote my own book. I mean, I had a terrywhalin.com website, but I had nothing else back then. And so I decided to change. I said, I'm going to take 100% responsibility for my own success. And I don't care what the publisher does, I'm going to do my part in this process. And so I started blogging. I mean, there's over 600 million blogs out there, Chris and Anthony. But about a year ago, I found this article that said that I was one of the top 27 content producers out there. I mean, I'm with Seth Godin and Ryan Holiday and all these people. They got Terry Whalin's name because I've written over 1,700 blog entries. That's on my blog. I mean, that's a massive amount of content that I've done. But I do it every week. You know, I write this little article about the writing life and what that's about. That's what people can do. They can do these things. And I know people can do this because I've done it. I've turned around my whole situation here where I'm selling books in the bookstore, but I'm proactively doing something every day to help those books get out there. And that's an effort that a lot of people they're maybe not aware of, or they're not willing to do at the end of the day.
Anthony, we're going to get to the speed round next, but I want to give you an opportunity to react to that too, because I think what he's talking about, well, there's two pieces there. The first is that detachment of idea to ego. It's very hard to get to that point. So talk a little bit about that. And then also talk about this idea. And what you were just saying, Terry, is testing your idea in the market, getting it out there. I know that you're saying you're writing about the writer's life in the blog post, but I know also you're floating ideas out into the marketplace that will eventually find their way into some of your books. Talk about those two concepts as it pertains to founders, Anthony.
Well, so there's a couple things that I pulled from that I think are really interesting. One, there's this tension when you're a founder starting, especially with a founder with a new idea. In order to get proper feedback on your idea, you have to take it to a certain level. You have to think about it for a certain amount of time in order for you to be able to articulate it, and you have to massage it and build it. And if you're writing a book, every sentence, your first few sentences, you've got to think about them in depth. And now you're at this point where you're invested. And if somebody doesn't like it, you just put a lot of work into something that somebody else doesn't like. So you inherently suffer from the sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, I was just about to say, this is classic personal sunk cost. It's not
right?
just a business problem.
So there is this problem that you suffer from that all of us suffer from, where you have like, well, I just didn't explain it right, or that person doesn't get it. Like, you give excuses for why your thing isn't working. And what Terry kind of honed in on is a mindset shift. I think it's incredibly important. This idea of you're 100% responsible for your idea winning means that you can't blame somebody else if it's not working.
No.
It's this ownership piece that all of a sudden, when you're an entrepreneur, you're the single source of something winning or losing, and you can't blame somebody else for failing. You don't care. you care only about winning and not your idea winning, but the thing, but to make money, right? You care. It's not just about money, but you need the thing that you're putting your name on to win. Therefore, the idea matters less than you being responsible for the success of what it is that you're putting your time and energy into. And
Absolutely.
removing the blame is critical to that. When something goes wrong, it's my fault. Even though if Terry screwed it up, it's still my fault, right? So I just think that's a very important aspect to this idea infatuation piece.
Well, everybody forgets, like the Chicken Soup for the Soul authors, for example, they were rejected over 160 times. I mean, that's a ton of rejection, you know? And what they did with each other, which I think is very wise. I mean, a lot of people, when they get rejected, they just, you know, they quit. They stick the idea in their drawer or something. But Mark and Jack turned to each other when their idea got rejected, and they said, next. And that's a very hopeful word, you know, that all of us can do. So sure, this wasn't the right place. Let's find the next one. And when those guys, they finally found a little publisher in Florida, you know, to publish Chicken Soup for the Soul. They told their publisher they were going to sell 1 million books in the first year. And their publisher laughed at them. They never sold 1 million books of anything. You know, how in the world could they do that? Well, these guys, they follow what they call the rule of 5. So they got up every day and they did 5 things to tell people about their book. You know, they did a radio show, a podcast, a guest blog post, a newspaper article, a magazine article, something to get out there and tell people about their book. It took them 1.5 years to sell the first 1 million books. And now that series is one of the most successful series that's in print out there. But those guys drove that. I mean, they heard no over and over and over in this process. But you got to figure out how to get over that and find the right place for you at the end of the day.
This is a contrary point of view, Chris, because what Terry's saying is they kept getting rejected on their idea and ignored it. And this is you hear this quite often where, you know, we're talking about this idea of idea infatuation, and maybe you need to pivot your idea, but also maybe not. And how do you distinguish between, how do you tell a founder that their idea is bad when you don't really know? This is hard. This is a hard piece. This is probably the hardest piece of being an entrepreneur is how do you know that the market is wrong versus you're wrong?
Terry, I heard the pitch for Uber early on. I heard the pitch for Airbnb early on, right after their. I thought both of them were the stupidest companies I ever heard of. I was like, people are not going to go, like, you're not going to pay somebody to go like a spare bedroom in their house. It's like, that's crazy. Okay, Terry, amazing conversation. Let's get to the speed round. Are you ready, Terry?
I'm ready. Let's go.
So in the speed round, let's start. I have this idea, perfection versus just getting it done. Where do I live? I know it's not an either or, but give me some sort of a sense about, as I'm coming to you for a pitch, what do you want to see? You want to see the perfect thing, or you just want to see something done that you can iterate on?
I want to see something that has been sort of in the middle, something that has been perfected, but yet, is in process.
And still the ability to change on it. Okay, secrecy versus transparency. How transparent should I be? Should I just throw every idea out on the internet? Or should I be really, really secret? Should I hang in there and try to hone that idea, that concept?
I think, again, it's somewhere in the middle is what I would say. You've got to shape your idea right, but you also have to get to that right person. So there has to be a continual pitching process there that you refine in order to get that idea out right.
I bought a book one time and realized that I'd read the entire book on blog posts. I was like, come on, man, at least come up with something new. Like one new post. Conviction versus adaptability. So this is exactly what you're talking about, Anthony. I'm really committed to a single idea. I'm just adaptable. Whichever way the universe is pointing me is the direction I go.
Well, if you're too adaptable, you're gonna, pick up every shiny object that comes around you. So it's a balance, looking for something that's going to keep moving you forward, but yet is also something that's going to be the right fit in the market at the end of the day.
Intuition versus data. Sometimes we just feel things are right, and then the data will lie. What should I rely on most?
Well, your gut is a very important part of the process there, but the data is also. If you pitch a book to me and tell me that your goal, I've got one of these authors, for example, she wants to sell 40,000 copies of her book in the next year. Well, hey, I'm all over that, but she's got some other competitors to Morgan James Publishing that she's looking at that she's going to have to pay through the nose to get that book out there. I don't think it's the right thing. And so I've been trying to convince her, but there's a balance there between those two extremes.
Big vision versus execution. Do I want to have and just hold on to this incredible vision of the world, or do I want to be really focused on the execution of this product, this idea, this book?
Again, it's a balance between those two extremes, as I see it. Yeah,
I like it. Unbelievably good conversation. In just a second, I want you to talk about your book and talk about how we can get in touch. But Anthony, what did you learn today? There's so many good takeaways from this conversation.
So the bumper stickers that I have, Chris, are first of all, realists don't start companies, right? So founders are not realistic people. The thing that we've said multiple times on this and other podcasts: fall in love with the problem, not the solution. The other one is seek critique over praise. Feedback is a gift, not an attack on you. Fundamentally, the market always gets the last word. A piece of this is also pivoting is not failing it's learning and adapting. And the last one, you are 100% responsible for your ideas succeeding. It's on you and nobody else.
Incredible. I'd say the only two things to add to that, Anthony, is the late great Colin Powell said, avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, the ego falls with it. I also think in this case, keep your ego separate from a startup idea. Build your ego around being a great founder, a great person, a great human, not around the success of an individual book or a startup idea. I think it's
Aristotle said, it's a mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. I think that's a great.
We're talking
Aristotle
philosophy, Terry. We're dropping philosophy bombs. You want to? Should we do some Nietzsche next? Should we stare into the abyss for a while?
Ooh, I don't know.
yeah, it's probably not the best idea. Deep dive recommendations. I'm going to recommend your book, Terry. 10 publishing myths you've got going right now. Tell us a little bit about. You've written 60, so tell us about a couple of your books. There it is. 10 publishing myths. Where can we
10
find
publishing myths?
The
best place to get the book is to go to publishingoffer.com. Publishingoffer.com. You can get a printed book from me for $10. That includes the shipping, along with over $200 worth of bonuses. I wrote this book to help authors have realistic, practical expectations, but also I have a Mythbuster action at the end, an MBA at the end of every chapter, a practical idea that authors can actually do, whether you self-publish or whether you go with a traditional publisher, to actually get the word out about your book and succeed in the marketplace.
Chris, I'm going to note this, that Terry has a very unusually high star rating for this book on Amazon. He's at a 4.8. That's almost ridiculous. And nothing below a 4-star review. That's a ridiculous benchmark to have for a book. So well done, Terry. That's awesome.
I was gonna say, or do you have some sort of a bribery scheme going on, Terry? Or it's like
no bribery scheme. I'm just trying to be realistic. I actually got my friend Jerry B. Jenkins, who's been on the New York Times list 21 times, to write the forward for this book. And even there's a gem even in that forward. I mean, Jerry wrote this book, a novel over 20 years ago, that's called Left Behind, which, he sent it to me and it sounded just like this weird premise. Half the people in the plane disappeared. It's like, who in the world would write something like that? But that series has sold over 60 million.
I was going to say, it turned out to be one of the greatest series ever.
And it's still selling about 20,000 copies a month. I mean, it's amazing, So, and he'd written over 100 books before this happened. So he was not some startup author here, but that's the journey that we're on here, to try to find the right place and the right fit with us.
Well, remember, I thought Airbnb was the stupidest idea I'd ever heard. Thought that nobody would ever do that. There's tons of other great startup books out there. Lean Startup 0 to 1 is a great book. And kind of coming this Crossing the Chasm, and a great article by the Harvard Business Review called "Why Do So Many Startups Fail?" Terry, where else can we get in touch? Any other places? Can we follow you on LinkedIn? Where do we find your blog? Are they
follow me on LinkedIn? Look at me on X. I've got 175,000 followers on there. My email address is in my profile on LinkedIn, as well as on X. Terry at terrywhalin.com. Go buy my blog, The Writing Life. There's a lot of different ways that people can get a hold of me. And I'm one of these people, Chris and Anthony, that I read my email, I answer my phone, I return my calls, I return my emails. I mean, a lot of these people in publishing, you can't even get a hold of these people.
Yeah, that's true.
Much less get a response from them. So I try to be an exception in that business. I mean, I believe we're in the communication business that doesn't communicate. So we've got to communicate as editors and as authors.
I think it's been amazing. Really incredible conversation. Terry, thank you so much for your time this morning. I think it's just so funny that sometimes in our world, Anthony, we get so focused on, hey, this is the right thing about being a startup. And you realize that the book industry is the exact same industry. It's got some different mechanics, but at the end of the day, it's so similar to being in startups. Anthony, what do we have coming up?
So coming up, we've got Matthew Lesko. Do you know who Matthew Lesko is? I actually have a clip of him. I'm going to show you guys. You guys may remember him. We're going to talk about non-dilutive financing with this guy.
Well, I've been studying government programs for over 35 years. I mean, 40, I don't know. I'm such an old guy. But I'm still doing it, and I get more excited about it every day because...
The question mark guy.
We get the question mark guy. That's incredible. I mean, we're going to follow Terry with the question mark guy. It's going to be two of the greatest episodes ever.
So looking forward to that. You can follow us on howtofounder.com. We're available in all the major streaming platforms. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in and participating in our little entrepreneurial project here. Terry, you are great. This was a great podcast. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I believe we live in one of the greatest times in human history. I heard Marcus Duhay say that since Gutenberg invented the printing press. I mean, there's great opportunity out there for all of us. We just need to find the right one for us.
Well, totally agree. All right. Take care.